Hi everyone, this is Pradeep from Sydney, wishing you a very happy good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever it is in your part of the world. I am delighted to welcome you to GCC episode 35. So, in about 13 months, we have now completed 34 episodes, are on to yet another session today. And I am saying hi to you from Sydney at 11:30 p.m. in the night. We have a very interesting session today. In a country which has 1.393 billion population, and let me just add that this was maybe yesterday, so the population might have increased in the last 24 hours, but let's say still it is 1.393 billion, and so many districts, and as I very lovingly tell people, is more like Europe. When you go from north to east to south to west, we have different languages, different cultures. So how do you get impact at scale? That is the theme for today's session, and we've got some very interesting people whom we are going to be talking to. We are going to be looking at two models. One is a top-down approach, where yes, it is top-down, but also where you are not driving the change yourself, but you are facilitating change. In an environment where governance frameworks are emerging, and in comparison, we will also have a look at how do we have a bottoms up social impact, and that also at scale. So let's give a big round of applause to our speakers, whom I'm not naming as yet, as well as everybody else. And to kickstart the discussion, I will ask my lovely friend Dinesh from Toronto to introduce the first speaker of the day. And Dinesh, for everybody's information, is a regular colleague at GCC. He's been involved in quite a few GCC sessions and professionally has been a former Director General, Military Engineering Services for the Government of India, and a 1966 BTech from IIT Delhi. Mind you, not 1965 when IIT Delhi had the first graduation, but 1966. So please give a big round of applause to Dinesh as he introduces the first speaker of the day. Over to you, Dinesh.
Good morning, everybody from Toronto, and good evening in India and elsewhere. Our first distinguished speaker, Mr. Prem Garg, I had a opportunity to talk to him half an hour back. Actually, we both signed in early on this channel, and we had a long chat actually with him. So we are going to have a very interesting talk today. He's a graduate in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi, 1960. Professionally, Mr. Prem Garg is a very highly distinguished global leader in devising innovative approaches to managerial accountabilities and systematic learning. As founder director of Quality Assurance Group at World Bank, his work led to increase in share of the bank supported projects to over 80% by 2007. This generated over $5 billion of development resources annually, which is really highly creditable. Even after retirement in 2007, after serving the World Bank for 35 years, Mr. Prem Garg remains a much sought after consultant by various United Nations organizations and the World Bank. With hands-on experience in almost 40 countries, and he's traveled about 80 countries all over, his work has been noted for professionalism, innovation, and focus on results. He's still busy. Currently, Mr. Garg is treasurer and board member of an India-focused US charity called India Development and Relief Fund, IDRF, where in my view, he continues to excel himself. Well, in short, Mr. Prem Garg is an amazing and awesome leader whose professional achievements have earned him global admiration and make us feel inspired and proud of him and our alma mater. With that short, brief introduction, I hand you over to Mr. Pradeep Khanna.
Thank you so much, Dinesh, and a big round of applause for both Dinesh as well as Prem. Prem, I'm delighted to welcome you to the GCC session. The only thing that I could make out from Dinesh's introduction was that he was only talking in billions. I'm happy even with 100,000. Yeah, it's okay. Billions you can keep. That's all right. So tell me, first of all, how did you happen to, finish 3 degrees in Stanford in 4 years? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I must have been really lucky, and I must have found good mentors there to guide me to that. But I must have one thing which really stuck with me, that the education which we got at the IITs really coming to Stanford, it almost felt that you were having a breeze. You hardly had to work anything to stand out and to do what you wanted to do. So it's thanks to what IIT Delhi was able to give us.
So tell me another thing, that was your schooling, did you do the schooling from Doon School?
I didn't, and I am not sorry for that either. As some of you might know, mine is a rather unusual profile in this setting. I come for a very small town in Punjab. I grew up in a household where we had no water, no electricity, no sewerage. I used to study by the kerosene lamp in the evening, and my mother did not have any education at all. My father had dropped out at the 3rd grade, and he had a small retail business. And for us, even having 2 square meals a day used to be a challenge. So thinking of doing schools would be not even possible, even in my dreams. So I did not go. I'm a product of government schools, and even up to the 10th grade, everything we studied was, the medium of instruction was Punjabi. So I'm not in fact, we had Hindi as the second language at the 3rd grade, and English as the 3rd language starting from the 6th grade, but everything else in Punjabi.
So I am very well aware of Prem's background. I am so proud of what he has achieved, and that is why I deliberately asked him this question. Now, the other thing that comes to my mind is that you've had a very long period of. I will be muting everybody, and Prem, can you unmute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
And Prem, what made you join World Bank?
Okay, again, it really was an accident. I did not initially have any idea of what the World Bank was and what it was doing. It just happened to be that during my graduate years at Stanford, one of the recruiters from the World Bank had come and made presentation on what the World Bank was doing, and it sounded like an exciting mission, something which I could relate to. And I applied for what they had at that time. I think they still do, a young professionals program, where they used to recruit 50 people from all across the globe to be the future leaders and the managers of the World Bank. And I was lucky enough to be offered one of those positions. but I had to really tell them to wait because that was sometime in 71, and I still wanted to complete my dissertation. I asked them if they would agree to postpone that offer, and which they kindly did. So I joined them in January 73, but it was really very much of an accident that I got together with them. But I loved what I found, and I loved doing what I ended up doing for the next 35 years. So I have no regrets. It was a lucky accident. You have to unmute yourself.
Isn't it fabulous to hear that, Prem? I love this accident, and I also love the fact that you have worked with what, 39 countries? Or should I say 41 countries? No, it's 40. So,
Give or take. I don't know.
yeah, I know, what's, one Uzbekistan here or one Pakistan there, it doesn't matter. Jokes apart. Now, the question is, in all of these countries that you worked in bringing about impact, inclusion, change, World Bank does not have any direct delivery responsibilities. Hmm. What was the way that you brought about change? We'll come to the quality assurance group later on, but I want to understand that how were you able to bring about change when the actual delivery is being owned by the countries themselves and you are in a way just providing finance? So, what was the success mantra?
Let me, uh, you know, am I, can you hear me?
Absolutely, we can.
Oh, okay. You put your finger on it. The change here has to come through the persuasion you can do and sharing of the vision which you can create among the people you are dealing with. It's not the money part which works. It is persuading that what you are doing is the right thing to do and is the right way to do. So, that's really what it amounts to, relating to people and getting the best out of them. It's not that we would be making the change, it's we promoting the change to happen through those agents, and that's how you leverage and that's how you catalyze and do it on scale, because each one of us individually has very limited capacity. It's mobilizing the entire group you're working with. How do you can leverage their capabilities? That's really one common thing I would say we used in doing what we were able to do.
But the question really comes is, I kind of imagine myself sitting in some remote emerging economy, and I've got this bucket full of money coming in from World Bank, and all I have to showcase is that I've got to meet, certain criteria and get them off my back.
Well, that often happens also, but it takes time to build those relationships. It takes time to persuade those people that you are more than the money and you are going to help them in a substantive way, in the direction they change and in the way they do their things. It's not sort of there is no magic man. You really have to work at it, and persevere with it, what you are trying to do, and each place offers its own challenges, and you should be ready that not every effort you make is going to be successful. There would be events where despite your best efforts, still nothing will come out of it, and that's the nature of the development process and nature of the innovation one has to accept.
So I fully appreciate. So end of the day, it really comes back to the relationship and the trust that you build in with the decision makers in various countries, and the value proposition that you bring more as a person and as a team of specialists rather than just the money. Now, were you just working with the cabinet ministers. So was it a very much a top-down approach, or did you also have your opportunity to get your hands dirty at the grassroots level?
Absolutely. You put your finger on it. While working at the top decision maker level is important to get the enabling environment put in place, but the real change will come by understanding the problem at the grassroots level, by interacting with people whose lives you are trying to impact. So my work involved, from the very top layers of the governments and decision makers to the lowest of the poorest of the beneficiaries, which we were trying to make their lives better. And in all my travels, I was not just staying in the capitals. I always made it a point to spend bulk of my time going outside of the capital, going into the real countryside and interacting with people at all levels, the technical staff, the junior staff, and the people, the intended beneficiaries who we were trying to impact.
So on a different tack, you and I both are working with couple of IIT directors and the Pan IIT leadership team in the US and couple of other stakeholders to look at excellence in IITs. Now, can you define what does excellence in IITs is that you are kind of working on?
Well, this is a joint initiative of the Pan IIT Alumni USA and Pan IIT Alumni India. And really, we as proud alumni of IITs, we are all very eager that IITs get adequate recognition in terms of the global higher learning institutions. But as you might know, despite well-deserved reputation which our alumni have in all spheres in all parts of the globe, the IITs as institutions of higher learning, as far as the global ratings go, are nowhere to be seen. They are not even in the top 100 of the 23. IIT Bombay is the only one which is rated at the closest at 172. And so part of the challenge is really what is it which these IITs are missing, and how we can really push them into where globally they would be recognized for their education, for their innovation, for their contribution to the society, and for the research. Now, let me be very clear that these different people can have arguments about whether these ranking systems are reflecting reality and whether one should really pay much attention to it. My sense is that yes, you may have problems of methodology, but then nevertheless use them as instruments for finding areas where we can improve. If there are things which you don't agree with their methodology, fine, ignore it. But at least let's the shared perspective which comes from those ratings, let's try to act on it. So we have been trying to build a coalition, and a number of high-profile IIT alumni are all part of it. And I would really very much like that coalition to be expanded. But we recognize that change has to happen through the leadership in the IITs and the IIT Council. Alumni can be a catalyst, but we are not the decision maker. We don't run those shops. And then in that context, our effort right now are focused on getting the IITs themselves on board. I'm pleased to say that as of now, we have a good active partnership with IIT Bombay, with IIT Delhi, Chennai, and Kharagpur and Roorkee. But we would try to initially start modest, so we have a critical mass to go with, and we will try to put together improvement programs together with them so that over the next 5 to 10 years, keep in mind these things don't happen overnight. There is no magic man which will get these IITs into top 10 or top 100. You will have to persevere with it on a long time. But if you start on the wrong direction, change can happen. And that is what our objective is. I mean, right now we are rather early stages, but I would hope that as we move forward, we will have the support and cooperation from all of you in this group and all the networks which you can tap into to support this initiative.
So, Prem, this very much reminds me of your World Bank role, because the actual change is being driven in that case by the countries and in this case by IITs. With the only caveat is with the World Bank, at least you had the money. Here you don't even have the money as an incentive for the IITs to change. But lovely at this point in time, I will get in the leaders panel. This is an innovation that I have brought about where you see we expect leaders to respond to any situation irrespective of whether they have the skill set or not, because that's what leaders are, and they're expected to think on their feet. So today's leaders we have, and to introduce the first leader of the day, I'm delighted to welcome Prerna Mukherjee. She's a lovely girl. She's a PhD from IIT Delhi. She's currently an assistant professor at JNU. And I will request Prerna to introduce the first leaders panel member. Please give a big round of applause to Prerna, and over to you, Prerna.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It was very nice listening to the perspectives of the global leaders. So I'm having this proud privilege to introduce our first leader for today's session, Dr. Lipika De. So ma'am is a principal scientist at TCS.
I'm getting some echo. Is that?
So
yeah.
continue, Prerna.
Yeah. She's currently heading research in the theme of economic and financial intelligence. Her areas of interest span in the areas of natural language processing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other allied areas. She has also been awarded the Fellowship of INAE in 2021 and also the Distinguished Scientist Award by TCS in 2012. She has 26 plus years of experience in R&D sector and also experience in academia, as she has been working as a faculty in Department of Mathematics in IIT Delhi from 1995 to 2007. So having this broad experience of academia as well as R&D, we would be very thankful to ma'am that she is here to give her perspectives on the session. Welcome, ma'am.
So please give a big round of applause to Prerna and to Lipika, and welcome Lipika. And over to you for put Prem on the spot and ask him questions, whatever you want to ask.
Thank you very much, first of all, for having me in the panel. Being amidst all of you who look and sound delightfully young, despite all the huge amount of work that you have put in to really make the world a better place. So indeed, it's a privilege for me to listen to you. It was extremely fascinating to actually know about how you go about, visualizing possibly a program to sort of persuade people to accept these programs, to continue with the change, etc. So what I would really like to know from you is, A, how do you really gauge the success of such a program wherever you have run it? How do you really assess it? And B, were there really moments of failure also? By failure, I mean it need not be a total failure, of course. It would be that the desired amount of impact was not met for whatever reasons. And how did you actually take it as a learning to carry forward? These are the things I would really like to know from you.
Thank you, Lipika. Really, you put your finger on it. making change possible in a setting. Let's say just a few seconds on the context. We have World Bank used to have about 10,000 staff, of which about more than half were with postgraduate degrees, and each prima donna in their own field. To persuade them and to change their behavior is really a challenge. But realizing that any change which has to come has to be by persuading those people, and these people came with all kind of skills and capability in finance, in economics, in technical field. You think of a field, whether it's education or health or telecommunication or oil and gas or agriculture, we had those specialists on our board. How do you really influence the behavior of these people? Managing a portfolio of, say, about 1,500 projects at any given time, with about 250 projects being added each year, of give or take, say, $100 million loan for each project. That was the challenge. And obviously, no possibility of micromanaging them and saying that we will try to do better than what you are doing in each of the projects and take control of it. You cannot really do it. It's just impossible. They are the better experts than we are. So how are we going to influence? But what we tried to do was, what is it cross-cutting across this 100-country portfolio or 120 country portfolio and 1,500 projects, which was driving us down? What were those patterns and what were those selected factors? Two things after a fair amount of consultations and interactions with these people came about, that our technical staff, although very, very competent, also tend to be very, very optimistic. They always look at the glass half full part, which is fine. But unless you recognize the things which are not going well, you are not going to be able to fix it. So they used to be, and it didn't matter whether you're a telecom engineer or a water supply engineer or a primary education specialist or a roads specialist, they would always, as part of their job was to go and visit those projects and time to time and report on how those projects were doing. They will always report, oh, how wonderful those projects were doing and everything was going well. They will keep on reporting that year after year till it comes, say, 5 years, the project is about to close, and suddenly they find, oh, there are a whole bunch of problems. And, the independent evaluators would go and say, my friend, you were saying that this project is so wonderful. It's not so wonderful. This hasn't produced what it set out to do. So that was a common factor, that we were not candid enough and not realistic enough in reporting the health of our portfolio. And unless you find those problems in real time, you can't fix it. If you find it only at the end of it, you can't do anything about it. Okay. And the second thing was that even when problems were identified, we procrastinated. We would think that, oh, things will sort out. I just talked to the minister, and the minister said, 6 months later, things will be better. But we did not act aggressively enough to fix the problem. And so that were the two driving common factors: cross-cutting. Are we reporting in the portfolio in a candid fashion? And are we acting on it in a timely fashion to affect the outcome down the line? So we built proxies around these, because that's measure of our own performance. Are you realistic and are you proactive? And that we use to drive the institutional agenda up and down the line. It didn't matter whether your project was primary education or your project was telecommunication. These were the two common parameters you have to be monitored around. And I think it really did make a difference. And now these measures and these proxies are proxies to influence people's behaviors. They are really, and hopefully those behaviors which will eventually have impact on the results on the ground, because obviously we don't want these behavior change just for the sake of behavior, but to impact the results. And they really did enable us and put in place a tracking system which on a weekly basis will, on all 1,500 projects, will report that's where your project is rating, using historical data correlates as well as judgments of the people. We used to do that, and that drove the agenda up and down the line from the senior managers down to the each individual task team and task manager where their projects was. And then we not only provided them this feedback, we also said, okay, if there is a problem, we are ready to provide you help, mobilize resources which will help you solve that problem. So that was the approach we took. The important thing about these proxies and indicators is that they have limited half-life. If you are trying to change people's behavior also get adapted to work to the proxies rather than to the real thing. So over time, you have to keep on refining these proxies so that you really make a difference over the longer term. But I think these were one of the approaches which we used in influencing the outcome. There are other things. I don't know whether Pradeep has enough time for me to explain, but
it's such a fascinating discussion. I was actually reminded of that story of Cinderella. When the clock strikes midnight, then she has to quickly run away. So similarly, when all the project indicators are flashing green, 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 and the clock strikes midnight, they don't suddenly change to red, red, red kind of a thing. But jokes apart, there is so much to discuss with you, Prem. We will get you another session. In the meanwhile, let me go across to the second member of the leaders panel. And for this, I'm going to introduce the person myself. And this is Anand Rohtgi. Anand Rohtgi did his MBA from IIT Delhi in 2004. Started his career with ICICI Bank, and today, where is ICICI Bank? Anand Rohtgi himself, his company Synergy Consulting has a very large portfolio of infrastructure projects. And the interesting thing is that I find some similarities in what Prem was doing in his World Bank role, and they are also doing in the sense that they are doing structured financing for large infrastructure projects all over the world. Of course, in their case, it is not just the developing economies, it's the developed economies as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Anand. And over to you, Anand, for your questions and perspectives in regard to Prem and World Bank.
Thank you, Pradeep. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always an honor and interesting conversation on this platform. Prem, hi. Just to give you a quick background, we do a lot of work with World Bank. We advise a lot of the projects which seek World Bank support. So I'll ask you one simple but very critical question. As leaders, a very important element is internal expectation management. I find that handling clients is the easy part, or the third part is the easy part. The more difficult part is handling the expectations of individuals within the organization. Now, when it comes to World Bank, just for benefit of the rest of the people here, all World Bank support was susceptible to a lot of political intervention by the countries themselves. And a lot of World Bank support comes with requirement around policy changes, etc., which seldom happens. So a lot of that is just done based on good faith that someday the countries will change the way the practices are done. And if they could have changed, they wouldn't need World Bank support. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. But where the challenge is that you have to go back to your internal system again and again to convince them to continue supporting the countries while the countries would not have moved very much on their own commitments. So as a leader, how do you handle that?
Really, you raise a very pertinent issue of the role of the international organizations in pushing the policy agenda. The approach which I took and which I promoted was that for change to happen, it has to be internalized by the decision makers. We can try to persuade them, we can provide them the logic of why it needs to be done, but unless they are on board with what you want to do, putting formal legal documents is not going to take you there. It's, even if under exigencies of the moment they sign up on something, it will not get implemented. So the real challenge is to bring them on board through your analytical work, through your advisory work, and making them explain why it is worth doing what you want to do. And if you reach a situation where, for whatever reason, you are dealing with parties whose motives are entirely different, the best is not just to work with them. It's not that every situation you will find that you can find try your best, but if you reach a situation where those people are not responsive and not having a shared objective and goal, wait for the right people to come, but work with people who at least are meeting you halfway in sharing goals and objective and the strategies which you are proposing to get through.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Let's now move across to the third leaders panel member. And for this, we go across to London. And we speak to Harbir Nat. And Harbir is 1989 BTech from IIT Delhi, and then he did his IIM Calcutta in 1991, and has been a CEO of a telecom company in Portugal. He has also worked with IFC, and last but not the least, he had his own startups of data centers in Africa, which he has exited recently. So he's actually swimming in dollars or pounds or which currency, I don't know. But please give a big round of applause to Harbir. Harbir, over to you. And now you've got Prem squarely on your sights with your
Thanks,
IFC background and Africa background and so many other backgrounds. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Pradeep.
First
Prem,
of all, tell me, did you get those millions and billions of dollars, or was it pounds, or which currency were there?
They were dollars, but they were not billions. So, unfortunately. But Prem, it's a real pleasure meeting you. I think it's fascinating to have you here on this panel. Did I hear correctly that you passed out of IIT in 1966?
68.
68.
Yeah. You're off by 2 years. That's all right.
Yeah, because I was born in 1966. So, that's interesting, right? So one of the things which fascinates me is the sheer pace of change in our society, which all of us have experienced. I mean, if I go back to you joined the World Bank in 1973. I was like, I think I was in the second or third grade in 1973. And I mean, the world then and the world today is unrecognizable, right? I spent some time in the World Bank group, not the World Bank itself, but IFC. It's part of the World Bank group, so it's a slightly different animal. I'll be really interested to know, because you spent 35 years with the World Bank, and how do you see the World Bank change from when you joined in 73 to when you left? And I think probably after you left, you must have continued to work with World Bank, as a lot of people do in some form or the other. Do you think the World Bank evolved as the society has evolved? Do you think it evolved enough? I would just like to hear your views on the evolution of World Bank itself, and whether it's still fulfilling the purposes which it did originally, because it was a very vital institution when it was formed. is still very important today, but has it kept that level of importance?
I think it's a lovely question. Very well.
Yes.
Over to you, Prem.
Very, and I don't think I have all the answers to what Harveer is asking, but let me try to share my perspective. I think certainly, even looking at my own 35 years of association with the World Bank, it changed materially. Prior to the 73 or prior to, let's say, 71, before McNamara took over the president, bank was essentially an infrastructure bank, primarily involved in building large infrastructures and mostly in the middle income countries. And one of the major change which took place with McNamara, poverty alleviation became the key word. And he introduced the shift of the portfolio towards rural development, towards agriculture, towards improving the delivery of social services. So over time, really, infrastructure eventually, we still do a whole bunch of infrastructure projects, but became a relatively small component of it, and for good reason, because infrastructure investments are the ones which can mobilize a whole deal of private capital. There is really no need for the public resources to be used where the market itself is able to provide that sort of a support. But on the other hand, public goods, be it rural roads, be it the primary education, be it the reform of the pension system, those are the kind of things where private sector is not interested in or not able to make a worthy proposition. So focus of the World Bank's activity changed materially. Now, that was the good thing which came with McNamara, but there also came one bad thing. He was so obsessed with the size of the World Bank, how big we were and how much money we were lending. And his primary proxy for the impact of the World Bank became how many projects we approved each year and how many $1 billion we lent each year. Not enough of a focus on whether those projects were doing good on the ground. And that really was the downfall which we faced. So starting in about mid-80s, we began to have a steady decline in the success rate of the projects which we were financing. Now, mind you, this success rate is not necessarily reflected in the World Bank's financial statement, because ours is a preferred status credit. Even when the projects which we are funding don't produce, we still collect the money. There's the country risk, and what that eventually led to what we had to make another major transition, and recognition by our shareholders and by our senior management that the role of the World Bank is not just to shovel money and to have more and more projects approved. It's in the end, are we making a difference on the ground? Are we reaching the beneficiaries which we wanted to reach? And that's where, in the mid 90s, while our success rate had gone down to, less than 2/3 of the project which we were funding, Quality Assurance Group came into existence with arrival of Wolfenson as the president at that time to change this narrative. Some of you may remember, the slogan at that time used to be 50 years is enough, World Bank is no longer needed anymore. Close it down, shut it down. And our goal was to change that narrative. And I'm proud that over 10, 12, 15 years of my involvement with that, we were changed the narrative from whether the bank is needed to a narrative where people were asking, what should the bank be doing? Should the bank be doing A or B or C? But nobody was saying that the bank is not needed anymore. So that is really, from my perspective, a short answer. But one can, obviously explore many different dimensions of it, because, like say, for example, early projects had very little attention paid to environmental and social factors. And we push the line that those are integral part of outcomes and quality. Unless your projects deal with them, your projects are not going to be, even if financially they make enough money, they are not going to be sustainable. They are not going to be viable. There would be opposition. So how we do our business also changed materially, and the things which we use to judge the performance of our project evolved with it. I could go on much longer.
Fascinating. No, thank you. That was very, very useful for me, even as an ex-World Bank Group employee. Thank you.
So, Prem, I am proud of what you have achieved and what you have done in those fabulous years. And to me, it's pretty obvious looking at the way the discussion is going that there is so many more questions, However, in the interest of time, we have to cut it off today. But I'm looking forward to getting you back on this session in one of the future sessions. Before I end, I can see a raised hand by BB Tiwari. So, BB Tiwari, can you please introduce yourself and ask your question? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I think, Pradeep, it's a very good, great speakers. My question is directed to Mr. Garg. With all your expertise in the WB, my tenure in the as a techno bureaucrat, we had a lot of problems, with the WB. And now I see that there's a major competition coming in from GCA, right? Into India, I'm talking. And I'm specifically talking about Uttarakhand, from where all these babus like us, emanate into the country. Now, what is happening is, in the last 20 years, the input of WB is absolutely zilch into Uttarakhand. Okay. Now, good old days during late Vajpayeeji's tenure, I had just arrived in India from Singapore because my father was ill. So I had made out a white paper which has clearances right from Pravat Kumarji downwards. I had a literally cudgels against Monty. And finally, after my reports to him, he made an escrow account in Lucknow so that the money remains going, whatever portion is, to the new state. Now, the catch in that is that I tried my level best with Edwin when he was the country head. He cleared it, but that money never came back into Uttarakhand. That's my first question. Second is, during my tenure as a magistrate and as a commissioner when I resigned, what percolates, let's say, in the ivory towers of Babudam in Delhi, never comes to us in the state in that ratio. So we have number of meetings flying between, the good old Monty's office and back and forth. Now I understand that certain areas have become the total control of GCA. I can give you a few examples in terms of Uttarakhand. GCA is into a big way in all kind of water you can think of. Now, why is it that the role of WB and ADB is dwindling fast, in these territories where they should have been there, because we got zipping right on the top?
So, if I were to summarize Vivian's question, Prem, it is that when maybe World Bank deals on a country basis, but the funds don't seem to be percolating down at the grassroots level. So
why can't we have an inbuilt escrow system or something like that, so that it goes?
Over to you, Prem. In the interest of time, I will just over to you, Prem.
Let me start with a caveat. First of all, I left the bank in 2007. So whatever my knowledge of the bank is limited to large degree to that prior period. So I can't really comment on anything specific of what might be happening. Mine would be a perspective as a layman, as an outside observer. I don't know the specifics of this particular situation, but certainly during the work which we did, one of our important function in improving the impact of the World Bank was that make sure that there is a good complementarity between what we do and what our partner do, including JICA or any of the multilaterals. And we were there to cooperate rather than to undermine or to really take away each other's business. There was a plenty of need all around in the developing countries. So we certainly pushed. That was one dimension of quality, how good your partnerships were with other like-minded entities. Now, in terms of really the fund flows, one of the biggest challenges in development business is that not all the money which is flowing into development goes into the intended beneficiaries. In fact, Wolfenson was the first president where explicitly recognized corruption and this bureaucratic holdups as the binding constraint, one of the binding constraints to international development. And I think certainly in the period I was there, we did a lot of efforts to tighten up these fund flows as well as the role of the intermediaries and making sure that the fiduciary aspects were paid adequate attention to. But it's not a battle which is by any means won. There are still ongoing problems, and really the challenge is especially in mobilizing the civil society to get over that sort of a behavior. But I would agree with you. There's a good deal of bottleneck to international development is finding credible, honest partners. How do you do that over time is something of an ongoing challenge.
Fabulous. And with that, I will call it an end, but only the end of the current chapter of Prem's session. We shall definitely be getting him on board for another session later on. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to, give a big round of applause to Prem for all what he's done, as well as to our leaders panel and to B.V. Tiwari for the wonderful questions and perspectives. And this is providing just the segue that I wanted, because B.V. Tiwari highlighted the issue at the grassroots level as compared to the ivory towers of whatever it might be. So, to look at the grassroots level and how to bring about impact at scale. Well, I'm delighted to introduce Rajiv Madani, somebody I have known only for 47 years. Rajiv Madani is my batchmate from IIT Delhi, and 42 years is the time that I have finished IIT Delhi, plus 5 years.
Ready? Sorry, I was on mute. Hi.
Hang on a sec, Rajiv. I have not even completed the introduction as yet.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, Sir Rajiv, so 42 years since I finished IIT plus 5 years in IIT. So it's all 47 years since I knew Rajiv. And this man was a textile engineer when I knew him in IIT. After that, he did his MBA from US and then went into finance. And then out of the blue became a guru in fintech based in Singapore. And is involved in some fabulous projects where PM Modi and leaders from Singapore have been involved. So please give a big round of applause to Rajiv, and for Rajiv, over to you to introduce Scale at Change at the grassroots level. By whom? Over to you.
Thanks, Pradeep. That was nice of you, but I have got more distinguished people here in the audience, and in fact, the next round of people I'm going to introduce, they have done some very remarkable things. And thanks for Prem and Lipika and everybody, Habir, with his experience with World Bank, IFC, and this is one project you want to invest in, or this is one project you want to definitely get involved in, which is called the Jagriti Yatra, you know. And I would request you to hear this story of Jagriti Yatra, which is a wonderful story, which I first was introduced to this by Ashutosh, who is the CEO of Jagriti Yatra. He had come to Singapore and he said, we are doing this wonderful thing for creating entrepreneurs in India. And it was a fantastic, and when I heard that, I said, wow, how do you do that? And then I started thinking, you know, when Prime Minister Modi says, make in India, how do you make in India? You know, I mean, you get the multinational in Walmart and all these guys, Apple and all, and, you know, tell them to set up factories, but they come with their own agenda. But how do you create the future entrepreneurs of India and make them create an Apple or a Google or a Walmart? You know, how do you enable these guys? And that is what Jagriti Yatra is doing. They are enabling the future of India today. And they've been doing it for 14 years. It's a wonderful thing that they are involved in. And I have three people here who I would like to introduce. One is Shashank Mani. I met him in Singapore also. Shashank is the founder of Jagriti Yatra, and he's enabled 7,000 entrepreneurs through his Jagriti Yatra journey in India. Second one I'd like to introduce is Sharat Bansal. Sharat is the chairman of Jagriti, and he, of course, both of them, I guess, have worked with PwC in India. Both of them are IIT graduates. And the third, of course, as I mentioned, Ashutosh. Ashutosh is the CEO, and he's very much involved in the Jagriti Yatra story across the globe. Now, I'll just read a little bit and then I'll hand over to Shashank. So Shashank, feel free to introduce other stuff that you have. The 7,000 entrepreneurs that Shashank and his team has created, they are from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India, the middle of India, as they call it. And he started this journey 14 years ago by writing a book about a journey through healing civilization, which is published by HarperCollins. And now he's working on a second book, Diamond in the Rough, which he calls that's the rising shining star of tier 2, tier 3 cities in India. He calls the middle of India, middle of the diamond. And that will be coming, the book will be coming next year. And he's a graduate of IIT Delhi, a distinguished alumni award for social service from IIT Delhi. And Shashank lives in Mumbai and travels to Delhi and Deora, where he has set up what is called as a Jagriti Enterprise Center for the entrepreneurs. So with that short introduction, Shashank, I would be very happy for you to share your story and also introduce your team as well. Thank you.
So at this point, I will take over. You see, I'm very control freak, you know. So immediately when I saw that you are handing the mic to Shashank, I said, no, stop. But jokes apart, a big round of applause for Rajiv. That was wonderful. And let me ask you, Shashank, are you there? You see, I was reminded of Albert Einstein. Why? Because he saw an apple falling from the tree, you know. So I was wondering that in your case, was it a mango falling from the tree that, you know, kind of prompted you to start this Jagriti? So Shashank, tell me what happened. How did it happen?
So firstly, thank you very much, Pradeep, for having us on this panel. And Rajiv, thank you for that very generous introduction. I think it was the act of being the son of an army officer. It was neither mango falling nor apple falling. And because I was moving from one city to another, most of these are small cities like Sangrur or Ahmednagar, it introduced me to what I think is the heart of India, which is India is not defined by its boundaries. It is defined by the footsteps of its pilgrims. Therefore, when the 50th anniversary of India's independence, 25 years back, almost to the week, was there. I thought that it was best that we took out a train journey, which takes young people to discover the future of the country, because we're highly obsessed about the past. But it's about time as a young nation we looked ahead, which is what we did. And that journey was quite epochal. It was 22 days. It was very exhausting. We didn't have the team. I wrote a book, as Rajiv mentioned, about 10 years later. I dedicated it to my two daughters, got published by HarperCollins. And then the Jagriti movement started, where people like Ashutosh and others stepped forward. So that's the bit of introduction as to the inception and the genesis of the journey.
So where were you at that time? Because you see, I know that you finished IIT Delhi, then you were working in UK, then you did your MBA from Switzerland. So all these are far away from the Bihars and the UPs and all that. So when did this idea? Yes, you were traveling all over the country when you were a youth. So was it in UK this idea came about, or when did the whole idea start?
So I think the idea was much more subliminal. If you believe in spirits, then I will tell you a story that when I was in 12th class, I had this dream. I think I had seen the movie Jagriti, which was about this young boy being taken across the whole country on a train by a teacher. Aao bachcho tumhe dikhaye jhanki Hindustan ki. That was subconsciously there. I had seen it at a very young age. And in 12th, I had a dream that I'm taking young people to the village which I belong to, and where, by the way, now people are going. So, I believe in spirituality. I believe in connections. So when I was in London around the time, my trajectory was after college, I went to Schlumberger for 7 years, and then I did my MBA, and I was in UK for about 3 years after that. I had this tug to say that 50th anniversary is coming, and therefore this whole memories came tumbling back. And I thought that I should do something which is more than just celebrate what happened in 1947. We should think about the future and take something forward. So I think it is parvarish. It is my parents, their upbringing, the satsang that I had with IITians also. I believe in satsang. I think with due respect to the IIT teaching faculty, I think a lot of the things that I learned in IIT Delhi was because of the beautiful friends that I have, which I currently have. I think all of those spiritual connections kind of motivated me to do what I did.
So okay, so it wasn't the mango, it wasn't the apple, but it was the film Jagriti. Okay, you had an idea, but now how do you get that idea into a working model? What about this train ride and all that? I mean,
Yeah.
What
So
was
I
it?
think
Yeah, over to
so.
you.
I would say that I will like to ask Ashutosh to describe the train, but I will tee up the journey. So the idea was that I have always believed doesn't reside in metro cities. And I was observing the previous discussion on World Bank, and with due respect to World Bank, I don't think real development has ever come from external institutions putting in money. It has come from original ideas which have come inside. And in my new book, I've also talked about how the middle was at the heart of our independence struggle. But right after independence, we ignored them. If we talk about Mangal Pandey, he was a lower middle class man. He was not a Rajwada. He rose up. When you talk about Dandi March, Gandhi, when he came back from South Africa, saw very elite people sipping tea from bone china crockery in that famous book by film by Ratan Attenborough. He took it to the masses. He took the Dandi March and he actually created the Republican energy. My belief is that unless we generate that same Republican energy for the next 25 to 40, 50 years, we will not make a country that our children will be proud of. And that is where we had this idea of the middle of the diamond that Rajiv talked about, the tier 2 and tier 3 districts, which are 240 of the 740, where 58% of India resides. That's 800 million people. That's 11% of global humanity. So we focused on that. We said, we will get young people from this India and we'll take them on a train journey for 15 days across the country, which will go south, then east, hug the east, go up north, hit Devariya, which we'll talk a bit more about, which is where Jagriti was born and it's my home village. And then from there to Delhi and back into Sabarmati. And if you allow me, I think Ashutosh, who was there 14 years back, his story is also very, very exciting, very inspirational. Right out of IIT Kharagpur, he went to work for a computer company. And then 1 year later, he came to Jagriti, and he's been with us for the last 14 years. Ashutosh could have done anything in the world, but he stayed and he committed to a cause. So if you talk about leadership, I don't think it's mine. I think it's people like Ashutosh and Sharat and now Anurag, who's also from IIT Kanpur, who are part of the team that has made this happen. So if you allow me, Pradeep, I think the story of Jagriti can be told better by Ashutosh.
Please, Ashutosh, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep, and thanks, Shashank, for teeing up. And thank you also, Prem. Listening to you was really wonderful about your experiences and journey of World Bank. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so the Yatra story is like this. I mean, the seeds actually lie in 1997 Yatra that Shashank did, which was called Azad Bharat Rail Yatra, which we did to observe the changes, the developments, the progress the country has made over the last 50 years. So it was taking those 200, 300 youngsters across India and seeing how as a nation we have developed. And that triggered the Jagriti Yatra, the new avatar of this train journey, where the focus was on the entrepreneurship in 2008. So in 2008, the team got together, Shashank, there were other few co-founders, people like Raj Krishnamurthy and Revati Prabhu. Raj is also an IIT Bombay, and Revati and one of my seniors from IIT Kharagpur, Swapnil Khan Dikshit. So all of these, crazy people, I call them, all of them crazy people, because when I was out of IIT Kharagpur and I went to do a job in a software company in Chennai, and I was looking for a way out because I was not liking sitting in a cubicle and doing this coding and debugging. And the first time when I heard this idea from Swapnil, who was my senior from IIT Kharagpur, I said, man, this is really crazy. No other word can really describe this. And it is because of the sheer craziness of the project that I decided to quit my corporate life and jump into the Yatra. So 2008 is when we started, and year upon year we have been doing, as Shashank described, that we take a full train from the Indian Railways. It's a 18 to 19 coaches train. We select these 500 young aspiring people who have this desire and the passion and the capability to become an entrepreneur. And there's a very rigorous selection process. Almost 10,000 registrations come, out of which 4,000 to 5,000 people fill up the applications, and then we select these 500. And then they come on the train, and the whole journey is designed in a very, very experiential format, because the key belief is that you don't learn sitting in four walls of classroom. Rather, you learn when you step outside in the company of like-minded people. So that's how the Yatra has been designed. We meet some really inspiring people of this country. We call them role models. They are social and business entrepreneurs. On the train itself, a lot of activities happen, like business plan competitions. It's called Vizgyan Tree, and other peer-to-peer discussions, panel discussions. So all these participants go back really transformed, and many of them have now started their own ventures in their own home districts, almost 28% of them. So that's the story of the Yatra so far.
So I understand that Yatra is just one part of the activities. And before I go back to Shashank, I just have a quick question. The engine which drives this train, is that a coal engine or a diesel engine or electric engine? Jokes apart. But, okay, so thank you so much. Let me go back to Shashank. Shashank. So,
I will just answer you. Actually, the engine does not run on coal or diesel. It actually runs on the sweat and blood of the alumni of the Yatra. They come just a month or 2 months before the Yatra, and they logistically set up this journey.
what a lovely answer, Ashutosh. Kudos to you. Lovely. Love it. Now, let me go to Shashank. Shashank, now this Yatra was symbolic, and it was one of the things that, got you thinking about how to get change at scale, from the heartland of India. But there are other parts of this group now. What are these parts? I heard something about a development center, something like that. And I also heard something about, 700 and something odd districts in India. And so, what is all this?
Yeah, let me tee that up. And I think Sharat, who's building that center lovingly, is the best person to answer the question. There are three parts to the Jagriti movement. One is Jagriti Yatra, which is well advertised. It's been going on, it's very successful. It's been replicated in 5 different countries, including the United States of America, because we allow about 40 odd participants of the 500 from overseas. We limit it to that because we don't want it to become a kind of international Yatra. And that is one. Second is Jade. We are curating our alumni to be present in the 240 districts. 240 are those tier 2, tier 3 districts, not very rich, not very poor. There are about 45 or 30 now districts which are metro and others which are rich. And there's about 460 districts which are relatively poor, which we don't necessarily want to go into because there's enough and more to do here. These Jade ambassadors are called Jagriti Ambassador for District Entrepreneurship. And finally, the Jagriti Enterprise Center, which is the first of which is being built in Devariya, which is where the train stops. And that is the only place all 500 sleep off the train. Otherwise, we sleep on the train. That's one night, as Ashutosh was saying, where we have a Biz Gyan Shri competition. So this is where we are creating the first of 4 such centers, the one in the north being in Devariya, the one in the south in Kanyakumari, the one in the east in Ganjam, and the one in the west in Nagpur, and a middle of the Diamond Institute. But what does this center do and how much it has been built? For that, I would request Sharat, our chairman, to please say a few words.
Over to you, Sharat. If you are on mute, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep. Sorry, I was on mute. And thank you for inviting us on this session. I actually was with Shashank in PwC. In fact, I was responsible for recruiting Shashank into PwC. And since about 10 years, I've been involved with Jagriti. But last 5 years after my retirement, I got headlong into a more active role. And for the last 4 years, I've been the chair for this organization. So the center really, I mean, we are learning from the Yatra, the effort that we are doing with these 500 aspirational candidates over the last 14 years. We realize that that's not enough. That gives them a very good exposure, but there's a lot more required for actually transforming them and helping them set up their enterprises. And that's where the genesis of our center in Devariya came. We have a lot of incubators, a lot of accelerators in urban centers, IITs and IIMs and some others, but there's none in a rural setting, none in a deep middle, what we say, 2 or 3, 2-tier or 3-tier districts. So that's where we thought we'll set up a center, and we are building a world-class center. I mean, the outlay for the center is almost about 90 crores. And the phase 1 of this, which the center has a lot of facilities, but the phase 1 of which is already nearing completion. We would be able to inaugurate phase 1 of the center in December. And that's where we would start. We already have a program for incubation that's been going on for the last 3 years with a rented facility, but now we are going to move into the center. The center itself would be a hub and spoke model. This would be the main center, and there'll be several satellite offices in about 15 districts around Devariya. So it is not focused only on Devariya district, but we're covering the entire Purvachal region. Now, this is one of the 4 centers that Shashank mentioned. We have 3 others in our drawing board, but we would want to make sure that we do this well. And what we would do here, based on our learning experiences here, we are going to help our Jade Jagriti ambassadors in the 240 districts to have a mini incubation program in their district. So the whole movement of Jagriti about incubation and innovation would become a pan-India movement. It's already a pan-India movement with Yatra, but even a grassroots level intervention would happen pan-India once we have the learnings from the center, and we are even thinking of a McDonald's franchise kind of model that we can take to all the Jagriti ambassadors, so that they see this not only as they themselves become a kind of entrepreneur to run an incubation center. And we have to learn how we can make this self-sustaining in some manner.
So that is a fabulous story. Only one suggestion I may have is that instead of the McDonald's franchise, you may want to go for Burger King franchise. No.
Okay. Yeah. If you like Burger King more, we do that.
No, because Burger King is also by the son of an IITDAA alumni, So jokes apart, but a fabulous story. Now, let me go across to the leaders panel at this stage, and over to you, Lipika. Lipika, normally, leaders have only one person in the spot. Now you got 1, 2, and 3 people. So over to you.
Yeah, so it is a fascinating story. I was in fact reading up more about this. Uh, Indeed, I do have one grudge. I saw that your train route sort of doesn't go east of Ganjam at all. So the Bengal northeast portion is entirely left out. I hope you do have people from there. That's just an observation. So what I am really asking you is may not be about Jagriti as such. I understand that the kind of program that you are building now requires huge amount of money. You were talking about 90 crores for setting up the incubator, and that is really where entrepreneurs will come up and will be actually serving the country. Now, what I find, this is just an observation, I may be wrong, is in India, we hardly have big organizations or large corporate uh, philanthropic sectors or corporate kind of organizations which are totally into foundations, which are totally into funding this kind of activities. So how there must be certain things. So what is your experience in gathering this money, and also what are the challenges? Why don't we have it? What would you suggest as something which would make possibly money flow easier for these kind of activities?
Yeah,
Wonderful question, Lipika.
I'll take that up. So I think firstly, let's dimensionalize the money we are talking about. Let's talk about the 54 crores we need for the capital and the 45 odd crores that we need for what we call an endowment plus sustainability. This is impacting 50 million people. Ashoka University, which was built some years back, is a beautiful effort. I know both the founders, spent 1,200 crores. I 1,000 crores. We will start from where the majority lives, not where the elite live. And I may come across as slightly passionate on this issue, but unless this point is made very clearly, it'll always be dodged around, right? Now, coming to the second part of the question, how do we raise that money? Well, actually, what has happened over the last many years, including IFC, that the belief that enterprise-led development is a leverage model of development is now coming up across many places. When we started Jagriti Yatra 14 years back, CSR was not really looking upon us as a very going proposition. But now a number of people are saying that the leverage that happens in three fashion. Number one, when you invest in something, it is a balance sheet investment. So many of the companies that Sharat or I or Ashutosh could talk about, there are about 120 companies now. When you invest in a woman, she invests in a achar making factory. That factory will give leverage for the next 10, 15 years. Secondly, when you invest in a lady, she's going to invest in 15 or 50 to 100 other women. So there's a lot of investment there. And finally, we also feel that the network effects which is happening is very interesting. Now that we have 120 companies, small, large, in that area, we're finding that we don't have to say anything. So we believe that over the last, I mean, it's still early days, Lipika, but we are getting a lot more positive vibes from everyone. I think the global enterprise-led development model is also being seen as something which is very positive. Therefore, we believe that therefore, we believe that we are onto something good, and we should not have too much of a issue raising the money. But I'll end by saying that money is very important for us, because anyone out there who's listening to this and anyone who has some inkling as to where we can get leads, we are a lonely voice in this country. People would rather invest in a pretty school in Delhi or in Noida or in Mumbai or in Navi Mumbai or in Bangalore. We believe that these Char Dhams will take, and by the way, we are never but ambitious. We believe we need $1 billion in the next 10 years. Our own Char Dhams doesn't require $1 billion. We require something of the order of about $100 million or so. But I believe if somebody says that $1 billion can be given to a Jagriti kind of movement and all the 240 districts can be looked at, we can change this country in a lifetime. So I'll end there.
I'll just add, I mean, I like Shashank bravado about raising money. That's where we all spend sleepless nights trying to find the next 1 crore or 50 lakhs or whatever, because it's not only the capital expenditure, it's also the program expenditure that we are incurring month on month. but the story is getting around. People are becoming, and government has, of course, this 2% CSR spend mandatory now for profitable companies. So I think all in all, it can help. But any links, any connection would be welcome. And more importantly, if we can have some international funding, I mean, whether it is HNIs and there's a whole lot of Indians doing very well in other countries. And for them, it'll be a small change compared to what we can ask from people in India. So we need all the help that we require, even to raise the first 50 crores and the 100 crores that we talk about.
Fabulous. Now over to Harbir from UK. Harbir, over to you for your questions and perspectives.
Thanks, Pradeep. This is really fascinating to listen to. Shashank, you and I also have something in common. We're both kids of army officers. And I can relate what you're talking about, going on these from one town to the other. It breeds a particular kind of personality in you, by the way. I have friends in my school who joined the school and left the school, like joined in the first standard, left in 12th standard. And I changed school almost every 3 years or so. And I'm also slightly curious on the mode you chose, like a train journey. I think that's got something to do with being an army officer's kid as well, because all our holidays was basically sitting in a train from wherever we are and going to our grandparents' place or uncle's place. We've done a lot of train journeys in our life, I'm pretty sure.
That's true.
What I think is fascinating about what you've said, first thing is this whole business of entrepreneurship. Okay, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I had to kind of fight my way to be an entrepreneur, because once you do an IIT and IIM, it's very difficult to be an entrepreneur. Okay, unless your dad is very rich or your wife has a fantastic job and she's very kind to you and lets you fund your crazy dreams, you're always put propositions up. The opportunity cost is just too high. Okay, just to put it. Nonetheless, entrepreneurship is vital to our society because nothing else creates jobs like entrepreneurship does. To me, the most fulfilling part of my effort has been the jobs I create. Okay? And I know I created them because I know these people, not these people, I said some people would not have jobs. So that's fascinating. Okay? The second thing which I really love is your ambition. Okay, as you said, you're not shy of ambition. But I have a very simple question to ask you. How will you measure your success?
Maybe I'll start and I'll let Ashutosh come in. I think I just want to say that our definition of entrepreneurship is broader than enterprise as the West says the word. It's a French word, as we all know. हमने उसका एक नया शब्द बनाया है. उसका शब्द का नाम है उद्यमिता. उद्यमिता सिर्फ पैसे बनाने के लिए कंपनी खड़ा करना नहीं है. उद्यमिता में एक क्षेत्र को आगे बढ़ाने की क्षमता रखने की बात हो रही है. So entrepreneurship in the way, udyamita in the way we parlay, is not only meant for those who can start a company. Although if I was to be asked for to quantify, I would 60-70% would be that. It's also a state of mind where people in these districts can do something for society, which is from less resources and takes it forward in a different way. A good school, a social enterprise, an economic enterprise. I think in terms of measurement of success, see, firstly, enterprise essentially drives meaning. Like you said, one of the best, why are we doing this for the last 15 years? I mean, if I may be candid, it's not easy. Getting 800 people, because 500 are people on the train and 300 are helpers, 8,000 kilometers consistently for 14 years. Last 2 years, we didn't give up because it was COVID. We did digitally. We took 700 people on a digital platform. And they all were there all through because we do it in cohorts and groups. So we don't believe in Zoom fatigue kind of things. The reason is that you see human development happen in front of your eyes. You see young people grow up. That gives a tremendous amount of satisfaction. So that's one thing, that entrepreneurship drives meaning for people who are there and it gets them to be less bureaucratic, more agile, more creative. That in itself is a goodness. The second is we measure ourselves in jobs created, I must say. Third is we measure ourselves also in perhaps the wealth which is created. And we want to be ambitious about this. Wealth creation is seen to be the domain of those in large metro cities. No, I think wealth creation and creation of a nest, it should be the definition of everyone. And finally, I'll say that we have patronized our citizens for the last 75 years by treating them as voters and consumers. Vote karo, jao 5 saal baad dekhi jayegi. आप छोटे-छोटे shampoos खरीदो ताकि आपके वो cash flow नहीं हो. For heaven's sake, these people are also producers. They're also people who are capable of so much. We have absolutely been very shallow with our republic. We are Republican but name. So we believe that by having entrepreneurship, we will also drive the Republican energies of this country. And I'm, by the way, the government strategy leader for PwC. I'm also, by the way, the aerospace and defense leader. And in both these cases, I'm finding that unless we involve society, we will kill ourselves just running around on a treadmill, which is with government support. We need to bring in the energies of society. And even in some things which I'm working on right now, for instance, non-kinetic warfare, which is very important. Unless we get the private sector involved, we ain't going anywhere. So what we are saying is that in some ways, Udyamita is at the heart of a whole of nation approach in the next 25 years. And because I've spoken too much, I'm going to end here by saying that this is the last chance. The next 25 years, if we don't build this country, the coming generation will say, these Johnnies had the opportunity, they had the demographic dividend with them. They didn't do anything about it. So this stroll in the park that I'm seeing people do, it's out. We are dedicated, we are committed, we are infused with day and night energy so we can make this happen over the next 25 years. Sorry, you had another question, but I'd like Ashutosh to build on the metric part.
Yeah, just before you do that, just let me just share something. Look, I totally buy into what all you said, right? Just anecdotally, and maybe it doesn't ring a bell with other people around this room, but it rings a bell with me. I don't know if you guys have been watching the floods in Pakistan. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight to watch. But what's striking to me is that when I watch those people, they are very much like us. They seem very different from us. But what's also striking, if I go back to my early memories of early 70s, nothing seems to have changed for them. They live in the same charpais kind of stuff. The world around us, the world for me, is incredibly changed. But for a lot of people, has not changed at all, right? So I think what you're saying is very, very pertinent. And it's also important for social cohesion, okay? But I do have one question to you. I understand you answered the question about how you measure your success. But let me ask a follow-on question. How will you actually monitor the success? And I'm talking about not how you're measuring what you want to measure. Yep.
So for me, monitoring will start by sustainability. If I just go back to my $1 billion over the next 10 years, maybe 20 years, but 10 years I think is reasonable. And $1 billion is not a lot of money in India now. So $1 billion over the next 10 years. I believe that we can create a certain uplift in GDP because it will attract $20 billion of capital from banks, from VCs, from others. And therefore, my measure of monitoring, if I may just twist the question slightly, would be, can I create these franchise models that Sharat talked about so that at least 60 to 70% is coming from the Udyamis, the entrepreneurs we incubate, their success, and therefore we create a sustainable ecosystem. But I'll pause there. Maybe Ashutosh, you want to take a crack at how would we monitor and also the measures of success?
Yeah, no, so just on the measures of success, Harveer and everyone, we do have a pretty solid matrices that we are tracking. And to give you an idea, we have two kinds. One, what we call the micro indicators or community indicators, which means number of enterprises created, jobs created, the local community members like farmers, artisans, how they are impacted. So those things we track. And then there is something which we have not started tracking, but maybe in a couple of years' time we'll do, which is the macro indicators, which is on the ecosystem level. How do we understand the quality of lives of the people have improved in a district, right? So those kind of things which are mostly qualitative. So this is the framework right now we are using for measuring. See, as far as the monitoring is concerned, Arbir, we have to understand here one thing, that we are trying to build ecosystem in a geography, right? In a region with a very laser focus. So one thing that Shashank says, it's oil patch development, which means we are just trying to drop an oil and it will spread automatically in the region. We are not sprinkling the oil drops all across the country. So in this model, we are present in situ in the geography. Our team is there, which is right now almost 25 to 30 people sitting there. We have infrastructure there. So we are not trying to do anything virtually, and we are sitting there. Hence, the monitoring is very much hands-on. That is happening right now. So we have the people interface there with all these entrepreneurs or udyamis that we are talking. There's nothing virtual, right? So that's how we are trying to monitor, by tracking these people, meeting them on almost everyday basis. We have this cadre of people whom we call Udyam Core and Udyam Mitra, and some of them are also here on this call, I can see. So their role is to sit in a district and reach out to these entrepreneurs in some far-flung village or some small town. And they meet them almost on everyday basis, or at least once or twice in a week's time. So when you have this physical or in-person interface with these people, I think monitoring becomes a lot easier, as there is nothing virtual here.
Well, can I make an observation here, Pradeep?
Yeah.
Okay, Shashank, lovely to hear your story once again.
Yogesh, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Yogesh Handley, 79 alumni, and I've been president of IITDAA Alumni Association about 15 years ago, and had the privilege of meeting Shashank, remember in IIT Conclave at Greater Noida. So, what I would like to share with this community is currently what we are observing, as we keep on observing trends in current literature, there are 6 conditions which, if change, bring about a change in any system. This is the latest, the research of the articles that Peter Senge has been publishing. 3 of them are very explicit: policies, procedures, and resource flow, which is where very visible at the government level. You create 50,000 Amrit Sarovars. Very clear direction, very explicit. The next level is which is semi-explicit, and that is relationships and connects and power dynamics. And the most important one, the implicit one, is the mindset. And what I see Jagriti Yatra doing is impacting the mindsets. I have been in touch with your first gentleman. What was his name? When he Swapnil used to be in regular touch with me when the Jagriti Yatra, he was leading Jagriti Yatra. And we always used to talk, if we are able to impact 500 minds to think positively towards the country, imagine the impact they will create 20 years down the line, whichever line they go, wherever they go. And this has been amply demonstrated by the batch of IIT Bombay alumni, which at some point of time when they graduated in the early 70s, 20, 30, 40 of them, they started doing the social change. After that, not many of them remained in that area, moved out in different area, but when they collected together, they realized that those formative year impact on their mindset was so strong. Whichever area they went into, they made significant contributions. So what I see is this is immeasurable. Let's not talk about matrix of measuring this, but what you're doing with your heart and with your passion, Shashank, you, Ashutosh or Sharat and your entire team is making that mindset change or creating that mind space impact. And we are going to see its result sooner or later. Just to give you one example, we work in about 50 villages in Jharkhand, and we find when we do mindset change, suddenly you see impact happening all over the place. the villages become spotlessly clean. The malaria, the vector is absolutely absent. A place which had drought in the summers is now flourishing, that it has 2 crops every year. And the mindset is the key thing, and which is what I find Jagriti Yatra impacting in deeply. Hats off to you, Shashank. Thank you.
And
And
just
I'll
to
just add one thing to it.
just to give you some more information about Yogesh, he is very deeply involved into social initiatives at this particular point in time, but he's a serial entrepreneur and also being, co-founder of the nucleus group of companies, 3 out of which are already listed on the market. And also he's the co-founder of School for Inspired Learning and a couple of other stuff. Sharat, in the
Yeah,
absence of time,
I just
yeah, you want to
wanted
say something? Yeah, tell me.
just a little 2 minutes. I respond to Harbir when he says that it's not easy for people with education and IT or whatever to move to entrepreneurship because that's a safer route. But if you find today, particularly in tier 2, tier 3 districts, the youth are very capable, they're very driven, and they are looking because there are no jobs there. They migrate to, and after the pandemic, the amount of reverse migration that's happened, I think they are all ready for this support and fillip that they can get in terms of setting up their enterprises. So I think it's a task, although unfortunately pandemic nobody wishes, but that has helped us to push forward our agenda certainly.
A fabulous discussion, I must say. And now I move across to Anand. Anand, over to you for your questions and perspectives.
Thank you, Pradeep. First of all, a very interesting journey here. Congratulations to all of you. We do a little bit of our part as well. So just for the benefit of people, we run about 6 schools for underprivileged children, and about 37% of our profit goes into running these schools. These are very high-end English medium schools, but we set them up in cities where you have these large Dora areas where you have the children of the maids and the drivers and the watchmen, etc. So we're trying to provide quality education to them so that the next generation improves. One of the issues which I am seeing and we are struggling with is scalability. Not scalability in terms of resources or setting up new schools, but scalability in terms of leaders or mini leaders. People who carry the same amount of passion, people who carry the same amount of inclination to bring that change, and hence can push through some of these initiatives. And I'm actually finding money and resource to be an easier element. Getting these, let's say the next generation leaders who can, in 20s, 30s, 40s, who can pick up one school and run, is a very big challenge for us. Are you guys seeing that? And how are you trying to address that if you are seeing that?
Again, a fabulous question.
Yeah. So briefly, and maybe Ashutosh and Sharat can build on this. One of the things I forgot to mention when the question about metrics was done is that, Yogesh, you mentioned 6 processes, but for us, there is only one thing. And that one thing is creating leaders. Because if you have a good leader, everything else follows. We have 6 other things. We have mobilization, mentorship, market connect, money, mahal, miscellaneous services. But if you get the right leader, everything follows. So, and this is a belief we have for 14 years back, and it has not shifted. So to your point, sir, I think the reason that we are probably, we always face leadership gaps. We are always looking for good leaders. So I won't say it's easy, but it's somewhat easier because we have helped train or at least inspire 7,000 leaders. By the way, I would not want to say that we have created 7,000 entrepreneurs, but we have inspired 7,000 leaders. Many of them who've been entrepreneurs, many have gone to normal jobs. कोई स्टैनफोर्ड में अपना CV में जागृति यात्रा लिख के एडमिशन कर लेता है. We don't particularly like that, but that's also part of our life. What we really are looking for as a leader, वो नक्सल से लड़ा है उड़ीसा में 6-7 साल के लिए, यात्रा में आता है, वहाँ वापस जाता है. That is the kind of leader we're looking for, a committed person who wants to do something for the real India. That is, I think, thing that we feel we are better off. I think Shilpi is on this call. She was on the Yatra. She's now, last year and a half, she's been in Jagriti as an Udyam Co. Many others who are there. But Ashutosh, you want to talk a bit about it, and maybe Sharat?
Yeah, I think just building upon that point, yeah, finally, our work also boils down to finding good leaders and supporting them. It's not so easy, especially when it comes to working in this middle India, right? The tier 2 and tier 3 India, because everybody wants to work in the tier 1 and those kind of places. But really, what now is helping us a lot is we are not asking for a solo leader to come and to lead things, right? Because when you do a solo journey, you get also burnt out and then you move out. But last over the 14 years now, we have this whole community or network of leaders. So we are also not talking about the individual leaders, we are more talking about the community of leaders, because when you have a community around you, because as a leader also you have your pain points, you have your days of ups and downs, but if you have a community around you, it's a lot easier to go through those waves of up and down. So that's, I think, very important. And I mean, luckily for us now, over 14 years, we have the 7,000 plus, or even in the regional area, eastern UP, Purvanchal, where we are building this incubator, we are focusing on building a community, right? So that people can lean upon each other to get any kind of support, and leaders also need that. And hence another part of our work, which we heavily focus upon, is collaboration. We say that if you have to start an enterprise as a leader, don't go alone, find quickly other people who can team up with you. And they could be, to begin with, your own family members, right? Your relatives, your friends, on which you trust a lot, because trust breeds connection. And once you are able to establish that, then the journey becomes easier. So these are some of the things we have used in our process to keep the leadership alive. Sharat, you
If I
want to
can
add?
add a
Let
little
me
bit
just
here.
add, Anand, that there's no easy answer to this. I mean, it is a challenge for us as well. To first, for instance, even for the Yatra, while we get 10,000 registrations, to identify those who will really be the future leaders is a very elaborate process we follow, and we do succeed perhaps 80% of the time, not 100%. But to me, I think there's a lot of urban youth today who's looking to find meaning, just as many of the corporate people are looking to find meaning in their lives. As long as you keep them, you pay them some basic subsistence, they shouldn't be at the sacrifice of their family completely. But if we, for instance, all our team that we have in Devariya, now we have about 30 people, we pay them reasonably well to make sure that they are not hard up, but they are committed to bringing about this change and therefore show the leadership qualities. And I think that would be one praise. I mean, there was this fellowship program, Teach India, Lead India, whatever that. So there are processes where you can probably follow that would you would find leaders who are willing to do that. They may be for a shorter term, they may not be for the career, but even if you find good leaders for 3, 4, 5 years, I'm sure they'll then develop others to follow.
So, Sharat, one question. You see this building behind you, is that in the metaverse or is that a real building?
Right now, it's metaverse. Phase one of it, which is the front part closer to me, is constructed. So the whole complex is in 6 acres, and what we have in the first phase is about a fifth of what we are going to do in the entire complex.
Okay, look, this has been absolutely a fabulous session. The discussion has been so rich and so wide and varied. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I could see again that BB Tiwari was raising his hand. Now, BB, in case you still want to ask that question, that burning question you have at this particular point in time, I'll give you 5 seconds. I'll count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Any opportunity is gone. Okay, so no, feel free to connect up later on. Now, a big thank you to all of you. It is, pretty obvious that GCC is like Yatra. You know, it is episode after episode after episode. We are encountering new experiences. And so to me, this was a very, very interesting session, and I look forward to continuing the discussion both on GCC as well as beyond. So a big thank you to all of you, to Prem from Washington, to Harpreet from London, to Rajiv from Singapore, to Shashank from Mumbai, to Sharat, wherever that center or metaverse, to Lipika, wherever she is in India at this particular point in time, and to everybody else, and to Anand. And and of course, I missed out Prerna. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining and making it such a lovely session, and everybody else who took out the time. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
enjoy
Thank you,
your
Pradeep. Thank
morning
you.
tea, afternoon glass of lassi, evening glass of wine, or whatever it is in your part of the world. I will have to settle for a cup of tea, even though it is 1:15 in the night. Take care and bye from Sydney.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.